Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today we have Alison Marras with us. Welcome, Alison.
Thanks so much for having me, Elizabeth.
Let me just give you all a brief update on her bio. She is a mom of 2 babies, holistic nutritionist, published author of the Paleo Gut Healing Cookbook, the gut health expert specializing in autoimmune disease and food sensitivities. After putting her own Hashimoto's, PCOS, and IBS into remission, she made it her mission to help other women heal chronic digestive and hormonal symptoms without restrictive elimination diets or stress. She is the creator of the Tune Method, which she's guided hundreds of clients to confidently heal at the root cause level while finding balance and joy with food again. So as I'm reading this, I'm laughing because I was looking at my notes in my phone yesterday, and I've had, everybody who's listening knows that I've had years and years of gut stuff, but like the FODMAP diet is on my phone and the elimination, like all these things of years, 15 years probably of times where I've gone through and been like, okay, this is what I'm writing down this time. And this is what I'm supposed to be eliminating this time and whatever. So I cannot wait to hear how you started to tackle this. So take us back to when you first started experiencing these symptoms yourself, and how did this start your journey and impact your life?
Yeah, well, similar to you, it's kind of like collecting all this diet information because that's definitely readily available on the interwebs if you're if you're searching everything. And it can be really empowering to feel like, okay, with some dietary shifts, I can make a huge change in my health, which you absolutely can. Especially me, who was coming from the standard American diet, essentially thinking I was eating healthy, smoothies and salads and whatever, but not realizing what would be optimal for my digestion and what was bothering me and all the things. So at first it could feel really empowering, but then I started realizing like, okay, this is feeling very rigid, restrictive, and I'm not getting better. So what's the deal here?
That
And
was
so
my
that's
same thing too. Is it
right.
became so frustrating because you really are like, for me, I was at a desperation point. So I was doing all the things to a T and I wasn't feeling better.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And that's the
tell me.
proof. That is the proof right there, because I feel like sometimes we have a hard time letting it go of like, well, let me just try this new diet. Oh, well, what about this new diet? I've been there. Um, but I think it's so important to really understand it's not just what you eat, it's how you eat, why you eat, when you eat, and then nothing to do with food at all, right? There's plenty of other things. If we think of our body like a car and you're thinking like, what's wrong with me? I'm putting super gas into the car. It's like, well, yeah, that's the fuel, but what about all the mechanisms? Like let's pop the hood. Let's better understand what mechanisms could be going wrong. And with digestion, especially being such an epicenter of our health, it touches on everything. It affects everything, and then everything is affected with the gut. So it's such this two-way street that to really treat it alone in isolation with diet only, you're only going to get so far. So if you feel frustrated by elimination diets, a wonder, that's great, because you are on the precipice of moving past that. You don't have to stay in a bubble with elimination diet roller coasters anymore, and you can move on to other things that will make a much bigger impact. Still eat well, of course. Like at the end of the day, we still want you eating well. We just don't want anyone feeling like the more they eliminate, the better they're going to get somehow. There's been a lot of people just demonizing ingredients, like whole food ingredients, lectins and nightshades and all these different things, as causing inflammation. And that's just not true. I've been just doing this too long to be able to see like, well, no, whole foods, you're going to have nutrients and anti-nutrients in it. And really, I think what's going to make it go which way for you is how the terrain is in your body, how well you can digest, what those mechanisms are doing, and making sure that all those systems are online and ideal so that whatever beautiful whole food ingredients you're eating can be received really well.
Right. And I think it's different for everybody as well. What's going to work for me is not going to work for you. And I think that's really where it comes down to working with somebody who can specialize on honing in on your specific needs exactly. So, what do you think the biggest misconception people have about gut health and its impact on our overall well being?
Yeah. I think that's one of them for sure that we just touched on, is that diet is going to save us. That elimination diet alone will heal your gut. That's just not true. It's usually that we're eliminating triggers, things that might be setting you off, might be bothering you, while we heal more root causes. And that right there is kind of the biggest thing that for me, especially, cracked everything open, because I'm like, oh, I'm just sitting here overcorrecting with elimination diets. But I haven't asked, well, why can't I tolerate these foods? So
Mhm.
that's one of these misconceptions, is that you need to kind of like do a food sensitivity test and then live on that. And that's just no, 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 no. People will come to me every day of like, I did a food sensitivity test and I feel like it made everything worse. I'm paranoid. I'm hyper vigilant around food. I'm getting health anxiety. And the truth is if we don't feel safe around food anymore, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're not going to digest it very well, because the first step in our nervous system the first step in our digestive process is the nervous system. We need to be in a parasympathetic nervous system state. And if we're actually fearful of food, well, we're not. We're in the other state, fight, flight,
Right.
freeze. So it doesn't really matter at that point what you're eating. It could be salmon and broccoli and the most healthy, beautiful plate you've ever seen, and you still bloat, or you still just don't feel, energized, or you're not absorbing any of the nutrients from it. So that's kind of the other thing that I would love people to know, is digestion doesn't begin in your mouth. It absolutely begins in your brain with the state that you are in. And as a challenge to it, one of the best experiments is, I bet if you go on vacation, you can tolerate foods there that you can't tolerate at home. And that's because
Right.
your nervous system is in a totally different state. So it just goes to show it's also about how you eat, what state you are in when you eat.
Could not agree with you more. I just came from Europe myself, and that's been an ongoing thing that maybe I still have some funky situations, but it's not as bad as it is here. And I think it's part and parcel to, yes, you're more relaxed, but also the ingredients. I mean, hopefully we're getting to a point where our world here in the US will start to get more, you know, clean, so to speak, on what it is we're eating. But uh, I see it all the time where, again, I'm hesitant to eat something because here it's like, I know how my body's going to react, and I'm every time I'm like, okay, let's jump into this, because we know tends to be the drill, that it changes a little bit for me. So I'm really happy to hear that you point on that, because I think that is a great test for people who have had long-term or even short-term stomach issues, because it does really cause so much stress. And the receptors that we have in our gut directly correlate with our brain. So there's so much to be said, and that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But can you explain the core principles of your tune method and how it differs from conventional approaches to healing?
Yeah, I'd love to. So basically, the way that we like to go about things is similar to what I was just saying, where we start with the nervous system, whereas what we'll mostly see is that's like a side note, or at the end of a protocol, like, oh, by the way, if you're stressed, go manage your stress. And that's not even necessarily what nervous system regulation is. It's really about feeling more resilient and doing the practices day to day that are going to get us in more balance. It's not that fight, flight, freeze is bad. It just serves a certain purpose. And as modern day humans, it's just that we tend to live over there, and we seldom get into the parasympathetic, which is what we need. So yeah, one place to start is going to be eating more mindfully, chewing our food, being in that calm or at least safe state.
Mhm.
But then how about all day long? If we're stuck in traffic, if we're beeping at, people on the road, or we're freaking out over an email from our boss, or all these different things that we know is taxing us, that's one of the critical places. So we like to start there, and essentially start with the terrain of the body by going from a north to south process with the digestive system. So looking at the nervous system, then looking at the mouth, and going all the way down: stomach, small intestine, large intestine, looking at the liver and gallbladder, versus what we'll tend to see, even functional medicine starting more so with small intestine, large intestine, probiotics, supplements, kind of throwing that at the wall too much, when it's like, yeah, but the person doesn't even know how to eat. The person's freaked out by food. They're not sleeping. Their circadian rhythm's completely out of balance. Whatever. Their blood sugar is totally out of balance. They're skipping meals. They're whatever. And so we really like to zoom out, look at everything and say, let's optimize nervous system, the body systems, let's get that all better online. So we're actually changing the terrain of the gut with just boring day-to-day things that we all do, because that's where the magic happens.
Like
Then
what does that look like?
yeah. I mean, so example is even just when I wake up, I want sun to hit my skin and in my eyes the first thing in the morning. That's going to balance my circadian rhythm, which is going to help with digestion, with balanced hormones, my energy, my mood, everything. So that's like one little thing that we'll always work with our clients on, of like, what's our ideal day-to-day schedule based on their lifestyle, based on their symptoms and goals. And so that's one key thing that we can sit here popping ashwagandha and all these different supplements all we want, but it's not going to touch that kind of stuff. So we like to look at that. We like to think about the nighttime routine. We like to balance each meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When is all that happening for each person? How can they feel confident about what's on their plate and have a much simplified routine? Because that's what gets it done. Like if we're overcomplicating everything and everything's too expensive and unattainable and biohacking, and we're not doing the basics or the foundation, it's just not going to go so far, and we're going to feel really defeated. So that's what's really
Yeah.
important to us.
It very quickly can get overwhelming when you're doing all of that. I can tell
Absolutely.
you from my own experience.
Same. I've been there too.
Unfortunately. Yes. So balancing being a mom and career and your own health challenges, like how did you manage all of that in conjunction with your wellness? Because again, it can be like a full-time job to try to do this. So with those things that you mentioned, IBS, PCOS, Hashimoto's, those are all pretty significant and have significant effects on your body on a day-to-day. Where did that fall into where you are now with work and being a mom versus prior to that, your life before all of this? Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Honestly, my declining health was a catalyst for me to change everything, because I used to work in New York City in marketing tech startups. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was a beast, right? Like I was just nonstop, very type A and all the things. And that's when I was realizing, after a while of going through all this, trying all the treatments, all the biohacks, all the things, and not feeling any better. Like I just started feeling like I was getting worse after a while. I started realizing I couldn't heal in the same environment that was making me sick. And even though I'll always be a New York City girl at heart, I just realized it wasn't for me at that moment.
And
And
that's a big decision because a lot of people, that's not something that they can recognize of. It's the larger environment. Now, of course, New York is its own entity, unlike anywhere else on the planet. But to know, okay, I need to really make a huge change to get out of this space. Was that an easy decision to
oh my
come
God.
to?
No, because always living in or around New York City and all the things, and I mean, I'm 45 minutes away, but there just came a time when I had to put everything under the microscope. I think at first, when I was getting sick and then eventually diagnosed, because I was losing all my hair, I was in my mid-20s. I was just like losing all my hair. I was exhausted. I was reacting to every food under the sun, and it just felt like my body went berserk and was betraying me. And at first it was a little bit of woe is me, how do I fix my broken body?
Mm-hmm.
And then it started becoming like, you know what, I think this is actually here to teach me something, and until I sit down and take the lesson, it's not going to go away. And I had to really get quiet and think about what was going on, what was creating that environment. And this doesn't even mean, if you're listening, like, well, no, I can't move or I can't do that. It's like, it doesn't even mean that. And it wasn't at first. I was still there for quite a long time. And I had to just shift the way I was perceiving the environment. I had to shift the way I showed up, um, the sort of expectations I had of my own performance and what I should be doing all the time, and that I should honestly always be go, go, go and climbing and all the things. I had to slow down. So at first, I think it starts with that internal world and internal environment. And then if it aligns for you to move somewhere else or be in a different circle or a different relationship, because we'll see that with a lot of clients. Some people will just be like, you know what, it's my relationship, or it's where I'm living, or it's whatever. They start to realize that as a reflection of their own internal world, that they start shifting. Then
Right.
it's an easier jump because you're like, oh, I've shifted everything inside me and I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this. It just kind of becomes more natural when you start inside out. And it's still always a little nerve wracking to kind of take that leap, but it helps. It really does help.
So I think a lot of people who are listening that get these diagnoses, again, PCOS is something that I hear all the time, and they think that that's kind of as far as their fertility goes. Okay, that just means I'm not going to be able to have children, and this is going to change the rest of my life and what I need to do. And I have this big stamp on me that this is what I have. So, how did you take that and how did you transform that to sounding like now you don't have that? So, and you're a mom. So, obviously, that didn't get in the way of it. But I feel like I'm constantly telling people this is not what that means, and trying to re-educate them on PCOS specifically. But for you and your story, how did that look?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because just take that scarlet letter off, guys. Like you are not wearing that stamp, like so to speak, like you said, Elizabeth. First of all, I had to detach from that because same as so many of your clients and listeners, when I first heard PCOS, because I always had a very bad period. Like it was always extremely painful. I was on medication, then I was on the birth control pill. And then when I came off the birth control pill, that was my catalyst for Hashimoto's and everything. It was that trigger. And my period returned terrible as always. And so I remember going for a sonogram at NYU, and the sonogram tech, who wasn't supposed to be opening their mouth, still was just like, oh, you have cysts all over the place. You're not going to be able to have a kid. Like straight
Oh
up
no.
said that to me when I was, you're just like vulnerable on the table. You got slime all over you. I was just like, oh my God.
Wow.
And
I'm
then my
sorry that
Hashimoto's,
happened to you.
I know it was mortifying. And then I just like had to like go to work like a robot. And then I remember then that's when the Hashimoto's diagnosis came as well. It was like all around that same time. And hearing about how fertility was such a struggle with thyroid issues, or if you have
Right.
hypothyroid or whatever, I was like, oh no, I was getting to that point where I was like, oh my God, it's being told to me that I might not have kids. And I just, at a certain point, hit such a low with all of that, that I was like, you know what? Let's just F around and find out, right? Like, what if I give my body everything it needs and I love my body and I actually trust it? Because that would be a new thing for me. What if
Right.
I don't listen to anybody because they don't know what they're talking about? And that's what I decided to do, is detach from a diagnosis as being my identity. It was just data. I decided that for sure. Because I was going back to school to be a nutritionist and all these things. And I was learning, and something that really stuck out to me was the body isn't wrong. The body isn't wrong. The body's really smart. And so again, that kind of pointed me to then the environment was probably wrong. And my body was trying its best to keep me safe and alive with what it had to work with. So why don't I give it new
Right.
stuff to work with? And
Right.
that was the way I was talking to it, the way I was treating it, what I was going to identify with. And then, sure, of course, the food and supplement, all that kind of comes secondary, but it had to be this inside out work. So that's what I would say. And then I would say, after kind of adopting that, quitting my job that was no longer aligned for me at that moment and following my passion to what I loved, which is this,
Mm-hmm.
um, I got pregnant like that, babe. I mean, how many stories here, right? I left the job. I left the place that was toxic. And suddenly the body feels safe enough to conceive. It's like I gave it all the ingredients and that was the final thing. And it felt like I didn't even have to try at that point after a year plus of like, oh, no positive pregnancy test again, no positive, and finally it just felt like it all came through. I got into remission right before then. It was kind of like this clump. Everything happened at once with that too, when
For
I finally
you.
let go. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, I know people are listening being like, "Oh good, that's great for her, but not my story." And it's not that easy for all of us. And I
Oh, I
think
used to
that's
say
where
the
we
same thing. I used to say
yeah.
the same thing. Yeah.
And I think that's where we start back to okay, food sensitivities. Let's just start with that. What are some of the most common food sensitivities that you've encountered and how to navigate them without people feeling restricted? Because I think really what we're talking about nowadays is the food sensitivities that are causing inflammation. And the inflammation in the body is then causing us to feel like your body's is saying, no, this isn't an okay time to conceive. So how do you navigate that without feeling so restricted? Because I've had people come to me and they're like, oh my God, all I ever eat is this. How am I going to do this? Like, it feels so awful. But how do you help people through that?
Yeah. So many things coming up. So firstly, creating safety around the food. Like, it's not the food that's evil. It's just not right now. We're not going to have this right now. The most common things that I will want people to do per my cookbook is going to be paleo-ish, I say, because I don't demonize grains or even high quality dairy. Like, I think there's a place for all of that. But I think especially with things like PCOS, with inflammation, with digestive issues, it's going to be helpful to kind of stick to paleo-ish as a core template. So that's something that we like to do to kind of clear the table for everybody. So that way we're focusing a little bit more on low inflammatory whole foods for the most part. And if rice, if corn, if, some of these things do fine for you, go for it. But if we're unsure, maybe we just clear the table for a little bit, like a month, see how it goes. So that's a place I like to start. And honestly, in today's day and age, being gluten-free, dairy-free, or paleo-ish is so much easier than it was 10 years ago. I mean, there's so many great brands out there. You could go, even if you're not near like a Whole Foods or something like that, just going, on Amazon or Thrive Market, it's so much easier now. So I would say it doesn't have to be that hard. Let's check our attitude on it and try to focus on all the good things that we can have, find new ingredients that we like. That was one of the best things for me, is when I started changing my diet and developing recipes. It's like, I never grew up eating a butternut squash. Like, I didn't even know what that was in the beginning. I'm like, what? I just eat potatoes and rice as a side. Like, that's it. And so it can really open up your world if you look more at the foods you want to be enjoying, that can lower inflammation, that can give your body more of the nutrients that it needs to be safe and fertile and all those good things. So that's where I would say, from a more tactical standpoint, is focus on what you can and want to be having, and that's your grocery list. Don't focus on what you're recommended to not have. And then
That's a great
last,
tip. I think it sounds so overly simple, but
yeah,
really taking that perspective rather than the alternative makes such a difference.
yeah, because we're hardwired to avoid the bad thing, right? Like, that is what our nervous system is always scanning for, like avoid pain, avoid poison, because that's kind of what it's looking at when it sees the red list and the green list. And so your
Right.
mind just goes to the red list of like, no, this is what I eat all the time. I can't stay off that. It's like, babe, don't look at that then. The green side is your grocery list. Go have fun. Let's find recipes for that, and that's what I love
Right.
to do. I sent to you, Elizabeth, to share with everybody my Chat GPT bot that I created.
Yay. Love
So
it.
literally, you can plug what you can enjoy in there, and it'll spit out a nice paleo-ish meal plan with a grocery list, and just make your life so much easier.
That's
That's
awesome.
like a great way to get going. Just get in action, get out of your head. And then lastly, what I would remind everybody is, you should be able to get foods back as you heal. And I'm not talking like McDonald's. I'm talking, if tomatoes don't do well for you right now, or corn or rice or something like that, if those things are bothering you, you should be able to hopefully start getting those things back as you heal, because predominantly food sensitivities are a symptom. When we're talking about
Right.
whole foods, I'm not talking about like red dye number 5 or refined sugar, alcohol. It's like, well, yeah, those things anybody's body doesn't love.
Right.
And it's really like trying to find balance with those things. It's more so when I'm talking whole foods, I don't want to demonize them. They can do great for you if your digestion can handle it. So we still have to heal digestion.
And again, going back to fertility, my thing is this is a short window in the big, big picture. So if we can just do this and focus on what our end goal is to have that healthy baby in our arms, we can keep that as, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. And then after start playing around to be like, okay, I'm going to dip my toe back into this and see how I feel about this. Most of my clients, they feel so great they don't ever want to go back because they're like, I realize this is a better way for my body to be eating. So I think you'd be surprised once you start to just feel that way. And that was my issue, is I didn't really feel any different when I was doing one or the other, which was the issue. But speaking of fertility, curious about the connection between gut health and fertility from your perspective. Can you explain how gut health can influence the hormonal balance and fertility for people that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the biggest things is going to be detoxification. So we want to think about your daily elimination, that it's complete. We want to think about liver support, to make sure, because we hear this hormonal imbalance nebulous thing, and it's really like, well, we need to make sure there's not excess of too much something. So we need to make sure liver can process through that. And liver is inundated these days. As modern day
Mhm.
humans, we are inundated. Medication, supplements, toxins that we're breathing in, that we're putting on our skin, whatever. So the more we can clean up everything and reduce the load on our liver and make sure we're digesting and all the things and eliminating well, that already makes a huge difference on hormonal balance. I'm not over here saying like do seed cycling and do all these things. Like, some people can't be tolerating all those seeds and it's not
Right.
going to be good for their digestion. So I'd rather say let's make sure the mechanisms are working really well. And then the other thing, of course, is going to be nutrient absorption, so that we're getting our good nutrients, so that even that beautiful plate that you're creating, that Whole Foods order you just put in, you're actually going to gain from it, and it's not just going to go right through you. So that's some of the other really big parts of it. And you said something, you touched on something that I wanted to circle back on when you said about this is short term, so we can get pregnant, get the baby. And something that I'll see a lot with moms, and that I was really grateful to, is that I felt like this was put in front of me to be able to get pregnant, because that was one of my biggest drivers of getting better, is like I don't want to be infertile. Like, I don't
Right.
want to deal with this Hashimoto's PCOS connection thing, and not get that option taken away from me to have a baby. And I realized, like, well, what a blessing it was to even get sick before this, or to have this challenge, because now as a mom, I know what I'm doing and it's rubbing off on them. And
Yeah.
my house is already cleaned out,
Right.
instead of me going through it much later when my kids have their picky knit, already I'm dealing with that with a 6-year-old. She's like picky now that she goes to school and stuff. And requesting things that, I don't buy. And I have to have that conversation with her all the time. But what a blessing that I got to go through it for me, and that I feel like I know it like the back of my hand, to be able to take them through it in a really strong way,
Right.
and to have the energy to keep up with them, even though I have broken sleep because my babies don't really sleep and all the things. So, you want to be building up that resilience and look at your healing journey as the lesson that it is. That is exactly what it's here for.
Yes, for sure. So before we go and find out where everybody can find you, I do want you to touch on your chatbot, because I'm obsessed with Emerson, which is our fertility one. So tell us about yours.
Oh my God. So it came off the heels of, like, we started using it internally in practice for some wonky food sensitivities that people would have. Because I already have a library of meal plans, but I needed to customize some of them.
Yes.
So we started playing with it internally. I was like, wait, this thing is like great. I programmed it to how I was always making meal plans, with how much protein I think is going to be ideal for people, with a nice grocery list you can literally just go order online or go with. So it will give you everything, the recipes, the grocery list, all the things. You can even, whether it's on my blog or another blog, if you have a favorite recipe, you could throw it in there. It will add it to the list. It will extract the ingredients, all the good things. So grab that, because it's gut healthy, it's blood sugar balancing, which equals hormone balancing. And that can just make it really simple for you. And then, of course, if you have specific food sensitivities, it's already going to be gluten-free, and paleo is your option. But if you have more sensitivities than that, you can tell it and it will leave it out.
Awesome. What's it called?
I call it the nourishing meal plan bot. Really,
Okay, cool.
really straightforward, yeah. But everybody is just loving it. They use it so they don't have to think anymore, right? That's the best thing about
So
ChatGPT.
awesome. Yes, I love. And where can everybody find you and work with you aside from your bot?
Yes. Okay. So come hang out with me on Instagram at Food by Mars, and then foodbymars.com if you'd like to chat, about our programs and things like that. I also have lots of meal plans and DIY things you can do. It's all on my website.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for really the inspiration for so many people, I think, that are listening that have had these diagnoses, to know that it's possible to change, possible to have their babies, and know that they can feel better above all as well. So thank you for that inspiration and knowledge. And thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.